y'all, I'm Josie.
And I'm Vickie. Today we're going to be taking mothering little by slowly.
So when talking about mothering, I think it's important that we start that neither Vickie or I are mothers, but we do have mothers and we do have all these other mother figures, and so that's why we've been thinking and talking a lot about that, particularly within like our grandma. So we are going to take some special attention to talk about them. Um, but I know for me, mothering has been on my mind a lot lately because right now I'm taking a course that's on reproductive justices. But within that, we've been talking about mothering and like kind of going a little bit deeper with like who is seen as a good mother, who is allowed to mother, and what are expectations of mothers, and how are they presented to us. And so that's just kind of where my mind's been a little bit. Would you like to add anything, Vickie?
Yeah, Jocelyn brought up this topic and I immediately loved it because I have a lot of people in my life who I feel take on that role of mothering or who do actions that feel like mothering. So I was excited to kind of talk about those individuals in my life and talk about what mothering kind of means to society and this idea of what being a good mother means, like who is allowed to mother and all that kind of thing. And like this idea of having like too many mothers, if that makes sense. Like I'm trying to think of like this idea of like lesbian couples or non-binary or any of that kind of individuals who adopt and then someone goes, "Ooh, that's too many mothers," or like they need like a father figure or something like that. So I'm trying to think of like that in my mind too. There's just a lot wrapped up in this idea of mothering, and there's a lot of judgment and preconceived notions that are going to be interesting to try to talk about. We're not going to talk about all of them, but just kind of getting our thoughts and breaking them down.
Yeah. And then you might notice Vickie and I were using the term and word mothering as opposed to like motherhood. And I think that largely comes from the idea that like mothering is an act that anyone can participate in, and you don't necessarily need to have a child to participate in this act of mothering. And I feel like in certain aspects of my life I have felt that. Yeah. Where to start?
You can kick us off with your first thoughts. I apologize if I have a little lisp. I'm wearing my retainer today, so.
I didn't know you had a retainer.
Oh, thank you. Wore braces for 4 years, so I gotta keep these babies straight.
Very true. And so I want to kick off and start talking about who I've seen as mothers in my life. And when I think about that, so we have my mom. Um, she had me when she was 21. Yeah, she had me when she was 21. She was married at 20, and then she had my brother at like 24, I think, and I'm 24 right now. And I often just find it, I don't know, I every year when I turned 21, the first thing I thought about is I have no idea how I would have been able to be a mother at this time and moment, just because I felt like I didn't like I feel like there was just still a lot I was learning about myself. And so I think about my mom a lot, especially right now, like in these years, and like how much, I don't want to say like growing up, but I guess like, yeah, growing up, because I feel like we're still not done like developing and like growing and all that left. So yeah, I think about that a lot. And oh, but going back to mothering itself, so I, growing up, I lived in Vegas, and my dad would get deployed pretty often. So it was typically my mom and my aunts and my grandma who would take the responsibility of taking care of me, my brother, and then my other cousins. And we spent a lot of time with my grandma's. We kind of like based ourselves there. Um, and my mom would drop us off in the morning so that way we could take the school bus. And either her or my aunt, they would make a dish and then bring it to my grandma, so that way my grandma, all she had to do was just microwave food when she got back. But she only did that on days that she closed. On days that she opened, she wouldn't do that. And so I just think about like all the scheduling that went behind it and how they all made it work. Whether like we were at my aunt's house that day or my grandma's house, and my aunts, like, now they take a lot of pride in like saying that like they're my second mothers, because in reality they were, because any lesson that they taught to their own daughters at the time they were also teaching to me. And so for me, when I think of mothering, I really love the idea that mothering is a communal work, and it doesn't have to be on one sole individual. Because caring for one person is a lot. Like, I don't know. So that's kind of like my background on mothers in my life.
Yeah, I was gonna say something, but I forgot. But I can talk about my relationship to mothering. I was gonna say something in relation to what you said, like a response. But it really did slip out of my mind. But I feel like my relation to mothering is interesting because like my mom had me when she was 22, I think, and then she had my sister when she was 20. And she had a lot of help from my grandmother, her mom. Like my grandma, like we spent a lot of time with her because my mom was always working and so was my dad. So a lot of my childhood was spent like with my sister at my grandma's house, and like we'd sleep over her place even sometimes. Like we'd be there like for the whole weekend or something like that. So it definitely felt as if I had two mothers, because like my grandma was like a really big person in my life when I was younger, and still now. So I think I remember. The idea of like having a kid so young, and this idea of like feeling like you're not prepared, or you wouldn't be prepared. I feel like I really resonate with that, because something my mom always said, which might sound worse than it is if you do not know her, is this idea of like she had done her job successfully as a mother if we had surpassed the age that she was when she had us. So once I was past 22, once Daisy was past 20, and we both didn't have kids, she was like, okay, I did my job like perfectly. Like you guys are successful in my books because you don't have kids at the age that I had kids, because she thought in her mind that she obviously had, at least to her, she had kids too early, even though she was like in a long-term relationship with my dad, and she got married by the time she had me. So I just think that's interesting. Like this idea of being too young or old to have kids, and how I think that I'm too young to have kids. She thinks I'm too young to have kids. But if I were to talk to someone else, I'm too old to have kids. Like I should have already had like started already. If that makes sense.
I think that's really interesting, because for the longest time, I always thought like I was supposed to have kids by the time I was like in my early 20s. And I always thought that like past 25, like that would be too old.
Same.
That's because like everyone in my family, like all the moms, like they had all the children young. My grandma had her first kid at like 16 or something like that. So to me, that just felt normal within my bubble. And then I think especially as I got to like college, I started meeting people whose parents were like already like in their 30s or 40s when they had them, and I was like, what? How? How is that possible?
Yeah.
But I also think about I guess like I've also talked to other people who are like, again, like also really afraid that their kids are gonna have children like young. And I remember, I think when Kylie Jenner had her kid, because Kylie Jenner was also like what, like 19. And I remember just like scrolling the comments to see like what people were saying, and some people were like talking about like the stigma, any stigma that goes with women who have children young, but they didn't really see that same stigma applied to Kylie,
Yeah.
because, and then other people were like, well, yeah, because she has the money to do it, so why wouldn't she? And so I'm thinking about that, and I'm also thinking about like the idea, like I feel like everyone they should be able to have like kids when they want, and like as many as they want, and they should like, be equipped with the resources to be able to like ensure their survival and make sure they're okay. But obviously that's not the world we live in. Yeah.
I definitely, I remember when Kylie Jenner like announced that she had her baby, and there was a lot on what I saw, a lot of backlash, because they were saying that she was normalizing having kids young, and that now everyone who idolized her was going to start getting pregnant because they're like, oh, if Kylie Jenner can do it, like I want to do it. She's making pregnancy cute. And I feel like when I was younger, like in middle school and stuff, like back in the 2000s, or no, yeah, back in the 2000s, like 2010s and all that kind of stuff, if a celebrity got pregnant, it was almost like their career was over. Like,
Jamie Pierce.
yeah, like it was almost, their career was just over. Like they were just gonna be a mom and that was it. But I feel as if nowadays having a kid doesn't have that same stigma. Like everyone kept saying that Cardi B's career was going to be over because she had her daughter Culture, and she's still here. She's still just as successful, and I feel like having a kid doesn't take away from that anymore. Like it almost seems like everyone is a little bit more comfortable with women actually having kids and having lives after having kids, which is something that's crazy to even think of, that
Mhm.
wasn't normal before.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think especially with my parents and my dad in particular, like they're always like every year, they always when I go visit them and I'm about to leave, they're like, "Okay, don't have kids, don't get married." And my dad doesn't like in the most awkwardest way because he'll be like, it's like he wants to start giving me a speech, but then he doesn't. So those are the only things that comes out of his like words and like mouth. It's just like, don't have kids, don't get married. And I'm like, okay. And like I know he's saying it because he doesn't want me to because he wants me to be able to do all the things I want to do. And I think that also comes from a place that like if I have a kid or if I get married, I'm not gonna be my own individual anymore, that I'm not gonna be able to do the things that I want to do. Like I would have to stop school and I would have to just get any job and just like yeah, just not be able to live out the things that I want to do. And I think that just kind of like where like my dad's side of the family, I think that's kind of like the perception that like once you're a mother, like everything you do is for that child. And so you do what you can in that moment. Get first job that you're able to get to be able to help that child like grow up and live. And if and it's not even really like thought about like what if you want to better yourself or do more things for you, but it's like no, you're supposed to do more things for that child. And I think that just comes from that like place that you were describing too.
I definitely feel that in my family as well. Like, my parents are not in any way rushing me to have children. They're just, I think, more rushing me to find like what I want to do with my life and to get at it, because I know that both of them had to pause their lives because of my sister and I. Like, both my parents had to drop out of college because of Daisy and me. Like, they had to drop out and get jobs. And my mom used to say that she wanted to be a physical therapist, and she was going to UIC to be a physical therapist, and she dropped out and she started working at a bank because that was the first job that she could get. And yeah, so while and it's I think in my family it's less about you stop your entire life and like everything beyond this is like for your kids. It's almost like you pause your life and you can still do the things you want to do. You're just not going to be able to do them right now. And I think that's definitely what happened with my parents, where they got to do everything that they wanted to do and are still doing what they want to do. It's just not happening until they're in their 40s, when they had Daisy and I in their 20s. Like, my dad recently just graduated with a bachelor's degree in organizational management and leadership, which is something that he probably could have did if he didn't have us back in his 20s. Like, when like me, like I'm in my 20s, I have a BFA now. And the same with my mom. My mom went back to school and she got her bachelor's degree and she got a master's degree, but that she did that back in her 30s, like in her late 30s. It's I feel like in my family it's more about your life is paused and you're not going to be able to get to do what you want to do right now because there's bigger things to worry about.
I think that kind of reminds me of like I think typically when I talk to my mom, I'll ask her like, oh, because she was doing a semester like in community college before she like decided to marry my dad and like have family and all that. And when I talk to her, I'll ask her like, oh yeah, what did you want to do? And she's like, I really like typing, or she like thought about being a teacher and stuff like that. And so those are the kind of things that like my mom said she wanted to do. But like now when I talk to her and I'm like, oh, like what do you you like to do? Like what is happiness and what is like fun for you? And for her, it's always the answer now is more so like, oh, I really enjoy like taking care of the house and like making sure everyone's fed. And she just like really goes with that. And she works in a mall, but her mind is always like on the house and whether everyone's eating and everyone's doing that. And so that's kind of where she's at now. And I think at some point in my life, I felt bad that that was my mom's response because one time I was talking to my friend and she had told me that her mom had gotten these degrees. And she's like, what about your mom? Like, what does she have? And I'm like, oh, like, she dropped out because she got married and she had me and my brother. And then she's like, oh, like, didn't your mom like have like any other dreams or does she have any other dreams? And I felt bad. But I think now I'm like, I don't feel bad for her response anymore. And I shouldn't have. I feel like, it's solely valid to be comfortable and happy with taking care of a home and being happy with completing those acts of mothering. Like, there's nothing wrong with doing that if that's what my mom chooses and says she's happy with. It'd be different if my mom wasn't happy with that, I think.
Yeah.
So I think that's the big thing for me is that like that is something that my mom chooses and that's something that my mom is happy with.
Yeah, I feel like in society there's this double-edged sword where it's like if your mom's just happy just being like with her husband, being with your really cute dogs, Fire and Bella, and just like living her life, and she truly finds joy in that, like that's beautiful, that's awesome, like I'm really happy for her. But then some people will be like, where's her drive? Where's this? Like, what is her life beyond this? But if you have someone like my mom who, if you ask her what her joys are and stuff like that, it's not that she doesn't love us. She'll just say, she won't immediately say her beautiful children. She'll be like, her job. Like, she loves working. My mom loves working. Like, she was downstairs today working on a Sunday. So that's what brings her joy. Yeah. And she'll talk about her career, she'll talk about her degrees, and she'll talk about all this stuff that she made it a point to get, even when we were younger. And there was still mothering to be done. And I feel like there's this double-edged sword in society where people will yell at your mom for finding joy in that, but then also yell at my mom for finding joy in what she does. And both are going to be demonized for like their joys or the way that they've mothered.
Yeah, it's almost like I think for a woman who like is happy with like taking care of the home and taking care of the children, it's like, oh, why haven't you progressed past this? Like, why aren't you doing more? And then with a woman who is like working and finding joy, then she's seen as a selfish woman.
Yeah.
And it's like you can't do it all. It's not possible. And I think you were mentioning Disney and like the Disney moms like on TV shows how they're like super moms.
Yeah.
And that makes me think about how like in movies and like TV shows, like when they show a good mom, they show a mom who is able to work but is also like doing mothering to like 100% at the same time. And it's like I don't think that's possible really.
Without, I don't think it's possible without taking something away from yourself. And then like that might sound a little extreme, but like you have to be missing something. There has to be something from you that you're not getting for yourself. It's like if you are doing your career to 100 and you're taking care of your kids to 100, you're taking care of your family to 100, so that includes your husband and your house and whatever, then like where is that you part? Where is that like self-care part? Where's that rest part? Where's that mental health part that I'm assuming is missing but aren't being shown because it's a Disney show? And if it is being shown, it gets shown in a way of like the wife snipping at the husband, or like the husband saying like, oh, I never like you're not like the same person I married, you don't have the same like fun je ne sais quoi about you. And it's like, bitch, because she's tired. Like, she's doing so much, how is she supposed to also take care of herself and be this kind of like embodiment of what you need too? So
while you were speaking, I was thinking about these like messages of mothering that like we also get. Because I don't know like about you, but for me, my mom never really did this to me. But well, I guess let me go back and talk about my mom a little bit more, because like growing up, like her task was often like taking care of like her siblings and like doing things for them, because like my grandma and my grandparents, they had to work and do all this stuff. And my mom never really like pushed that onto me, like just because I was like the oldest girl, like she never like really made me do things for my brother a whole lot. And my parents were, I think they were pretty good at like saying that me and my brother are supposed to help each other equally. And so I never felt like, from my parents, I never felt like I had to do more because I was an older girl. But with my grandparents, I did feel that, like my grandparents on my dad's side, because like I said, like I would spend a lot of time with my older cousins. And my oldest cousin, my grandma, with her, she would kind of like, not saying that my grandma wasn't nice to me, but my grandma was really nice to my older cousin, and she was just kind of like, yeah, no, don't worry about it. Like, you don't have to clean, you don't really have to do as much. And then I felt like for me, like I had to do more for like my cousins and stuff like that. And so I think right now I'm kind of thinking more on like the acts of mothering that like we have taken on, and what has that looked like.
I think that's really interesting, because if I were to bring my sister into this conversation, she's older than me by 2 years. She would 100% say that she was given a lot of responsibilities of taking care of me, in the way of, it was definitely told to her that I was her responsibility, like
Mm-hmm.
100%. Like my parents always told her that I was her responsibility, and if something happened to me, it was her fault. And like that's a lot to put on someone like her age. And it's interesting thinking about that now, because like she definitely like still does that. And we're only 2 years apart now, so sometimes I get a little aggravated because she does like that little like mothering thing where she'll still, like, if she catches me not looking both ways across the street, she will legitimately yell at me, and I'm just like, Daisy, I'm literally 2 years younger than you. Like, I'm fine. You don't need to like mother me. I think I'd prefer like a friend, or like just like a buddy, rather than like that big sister. And that really frustrates her, because it's like the only role that she's had in my life is that kind of like mothering big sister type of vibe.
I think sometimes for me, especially with my brother, like there would be times, I think my brother just like really, and like me and my brother had a really good relationship, um growing up. And I know I think about this day a lot because my brother was sick. He was like throwing up, and I think, I don't know if my mom was home from work yet, but my dad was telling him to drink water and he wasn't doing it. And then I got home and my dad was like, tell him to drink water or something because he's not listening to me. And so then I talked to him because he was sick, and I was like, go drink water and go to sleep. He was like, okay. He's like, okay, I will. And I'm like, okay. And I think the next morning, my parents had already gone to work, and then my brother was getting ready to go to school and he threw up again. And he just like, I went in like 2 hours later than him because it was like my senior year and I didn't have like morning classes. So I would only go in for the afternoon. And so then he like came and he like knocked on my door and he was like, and I was like, what do you want? He's like, I threw up on the floor. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll clean it up
Uh-huh.
for you. I think about that where like my brother has always like had different people who are there like willing to like do these like acts of mothering and like help him out. And then I also think sometimes about myself, and I'm like, I didn't have anyone else older than me, like who was gonna do that for me? No one.
Yeah.
If I threw up, I was cleaning it up myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes I think about that with my brother. Not that I think at some point I did have envy for him, but now I'm at a point where I'm just kind of like, LOL.
It's just part of my trauma. Oh.
You know that emoji that has like the eyes that's like one down here, and it's like,
Yeah.
yeah. Can you put that over my face?
I can. Yeah, I definitely think that that's something Daisy deals with all of the time, because even though like I complain, like that's some of our biggest fights is like me just like being like, I'm a grown up, I don't need a mom, and like doing that to my sister. But then I have other points where I'm trying to find a primary care doctor for myself, and I'm like, Daisy, can you help me? Or like whenever I'm feeling like a little sick, or like I'm like scared that I have some like rare disease because I'm a hypochondriac, I'll like knock on her door and I'll be like, Daisy, I'm really sick. Like when I had like really bad like ear infections, Daisy was the one taking care of me. Like she's the one that like put the eardrops in my ear and like took my temperature and all that kind of stuff. So so I'm just like, while you were talking, I was like, dang, yeah, that's Daisy.
I think I'm gonna buy a ticket for my brother to come out here, and that way, me and Daisy will box it out with you and Carlos,
Okay.
and that's the way that's gonna make things right in the world.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, my brother's so small.
You said your brother's so small.
He's small. He's a skinny little kid. He doesn't weigh much. He's just there, and he doesn't really like hurt anything. He's just kind of like, and he gets distracted easily. My mom used to be worried about him like teaching him how to cook because she was scared that he was gonna burn the house down because he would forget and like walk away. So I'm pretty sure my brother would just be like they're like looking around, getting distracted. All of a sudden, someone sucker punches him,
Oh no.
and that'll be it.
Yeah. Okay. So I thought of ways that I mother.
Okay.
So I in contrary to all of what I just said, I think that I do sometimes mother Daisy in the ways that Daisy is a horrible cook. That's why it reminded me of this. And I make her lunch every day. And when it's just like when my parents are like out of town for like work or a vacation for whatever, like I'll like make Daisy breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I'll like make sure that she's like drinking water when she's doing her homework. Or I did her laundry for years because she just doesn't like little tasks, like little tasks like eating or like doing her laundry or like making sure she gets up and drinking water whoosh, out of Daisy's brain. So I'm always the one that makes sure she does all of that.
I think me and Daisy are the same person because I also do that. And when I fantasize about having someone taking care of me, I fantasize them making me food and like helping me with those little, not so little things
Yeah.
because they just slipped in my mind. We need to start like an older sisters club.
I think so, yeah. Because I suppose those are things of mothering, and I definitely do those for her. And I'm wondering if I want to know why y'all don't remember to do stuff like that. Are you guys just hoping that someone will come around and mother you because you didn't get the chance to be mothered? Like, is that too deep, or are you just forgetful bitches?
I don't think one, I think I'm a forgetful bitch, but two, I don't think it's too deep because I have a fantasy of getting sick. I don't get sick often. I never got sick often, and when I get sick, it's like I can work through it. I can do the things I have to do. But I've always wanted to get sick to the point where I have to stay in bed and someone has to take care of me because I it's rare for me to have the feeling where someone's taking care of me unless I go to my grandma's and she's like, and I'm like, do I have to help you with? No, I don't say do I have to help you with anything. I'm like, is there anything I can help you with? She's like, no, you could go lay down on the couch. I'll like wake you up when food's ready. And I'm like, okay. So like that's what I get when I'm with like my grandma. And my mom sometimes too, but not so much. Because my mom's just kind of like, no, help me around the house, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But that is a fantasy that I tend to have is getting sick and having someone help me. I try not to fantasize about it like too much anymore because I'm like, that's kind of fucked up. But
Yeah, I feel as if I cannot relate, but I understand why you would want to do that. Because as the younger child, I've had people take care of me like that, so I am not yearning for that. But I can imagine that Daisy would be yearning for something like that too. But my mom is really similar in that way, where like I'll be like, oh, can I help you with anything? And she's like, yes, do these 5 things now. But if I were to go over to my aunt's house, which I recently did, my dad's older sister, I stayed there just for a weekend, and she like made me dinner and I didn't have to help her, and she like brought breakfast to me in my room while I had an 8 a.m. class, and she brought me breakfast and coffee, and I was like, whoa. And she was just like, what do you think? I'm just gonna let you starve? And I was like, no, but like I helped my mom to do this at home. Like I didn't have to help you. Wow. So it was like that cool moment because I help my grandma too. Whenever I'm at my grandma's house, it's the same with my mom. Like I'll be like, oh, can I help you? And she's like, yes, I need you to sweep the living room and then come back and chop these vegetables for me. I'm like, okay.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, my grandma, she rarely asks for like help, but like sometimes like I will help her. I'll be like, I'm gonna do this, or I'll come back and I'll be like, I did this, and she's like, good job, go lay down on the couch. I'm like, okay. um, that's so funny because I feel like whenever I ask my mom, I always ask with like the hope that she's gonna be like, no, go rest. And then I'm gonna be like, okay, cool. But then sometimes I have to remember like, and then I get sometimes I get like a little upset when she's like, no, I want you to do these 5 things or like whatnot. And then I'm like, come on, Jocelyn, like she does this every day. My mom cleans every day. For what reason? I don't know. But she cleans every day, and I have tried to clean every day at my apartment, and I don't know how my mom does it because I think that's just. And then so I think after doing that, I'm like she's gonna be tired like every day, so she's probably just jumping at the like idea and fact of somebody like wanting to help her.
Yeah.
And really growing up, she would like, whenever she would get overwhelmed, it was always like, no one helps me. I don't know why I said that in a dramatic voice because it's not dramatic. It's
Yeah.
like it's a genuine like feeling and response if she feels like people aren't helping her. But I don't mind helping her as much anymore, which I shouldn't because I'm just a shitty daughter, but whatever.
My parents, especially my mom, is very big on saying like this house is a community effort and it is filled with community, so it needs to be taken care of by the community. And by that she means that she is not the only person cleaning ever. So that is my mom's like method where we all have our individual responsibilities, and she's very like list and schedule and organization oriented, so everyone has a specific task and the day that they're supposed to be like getting it done. Like once a week we sweep and mop the kitchen, like that kind of thing. I wash the dishes like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or something like that. And Daisy does it like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or something. Like my mom is very like analytical and very like she has a set schedule on when everything needs to be done and everyone has their own responsibility. And I think it's funny because the first time that it kind of clicked to me that she does that was when I was younger and I was helping her make dinner. And for some reason, I was like way younger. This wasn't like high school me. I think I was like in middle school, but I turned to her and asked her, how come my dad never makes dinner and how come he never helps make any food? She gave me the dirtiest look and she was like, because that is not his responsibility, because there's other things that he takes care of in the house and contributes to. And I was like, okay. But
She mom said, don't come in here with
yeah,
that. He does stuff around the house. That's just not
yeah,
the thing he does.
yeah. But by my parents, my mom specifically is very, this is a community house taken care of by the community. That's her whole mental method.
I really like that outlook on it, and I like the idea of having it kind of like schedulized where like people contribute in different ways, right? I like that it's not just on one sole person's responsibility to like do the dishes or sweep and all that stuff. Like everyone contributes in different ways and throughout the week. Sometimes I try to do that where like I only want to like clean like one thing like on Saturday and then do another thing on Sunday. But I get carried away and then I do,
You do it like all at once. Oh no.
and then I get really hot afterwards and I'm like, is it hot in here? And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay.
Me, every time I mop and sweep the kitchen, I'm just like opening all the windows. Like, it's really hot in here, huh?
I was gonna talk about my grandma, but then I was also gonna go back to so this morning, funny enough, I was talking to my mom on the phone. And I don't know how we got to this point in our conversation, but she starts talking about her sister, and starts talking about herself too. And like I had mentioned earlier, my mom, like she had to like do a lot and like take care of like her brother and sister, and like after school like she wasn't able to like really like have fun and enjoy things because she would have to be there for her like siblings. And her brother is like, I want to say like 10 years younger than her. um and so that was just like a really big thing that she had to do growing up. And I think after that she starts talking about like her mom, and she goes, yeah, grandma's had a really hard life. And I'm like, because I've heard some things here and there and I don't know like the full scope of it, but like I'm like, yeah, I can imagine with all the things that she's had to like. And like now I think my grandma's just like at a really like chill time in her life where she like goes to do Zumba in the morning and then comes back, watches some YouTube videos, she colors. And then I come and visit, I do laundry, and we kind of just like talk a little bit. And she like makes me tea. And that's just kind of like what her life is. And I imagine that she's at like a really like blissful place now where she
Mhm.
can kind of just like rest whenever she wants. Because I think even like a few years ago, she was just like, she was working at the parks, like cleaning up and like making tamales and all that stuff. Um, and now she's just chilling.
I was before you said Zumba, I was gonna ask if this was your grandma in Vegas or in Chicago. But
My grandma here in Chicago.
yeah.
Yeah, my grandma here in Chicago, the one I go visit.
Yeah, the Zumba is what ticked me off because I remember you talking about her and going to the Zumba classes and inviting you. I both of my grandmothers are still alive, both on my dad's side and my mom's side, and my great grandmother is still alive on my dad's side. I think my great grandmother on my mom's side has passed away. I don't really know. Just because I feel like my grandma on my mom's side is very secretive, and I actually don't know too much about her life. I know that she is from Mexico. She came to the United States when she was 18, and she met my grandfather in the US because they're from two different parts of Mexico. They met in the US and they got married in the US. Yeah, I know that she owned a hair salon and that was in like on the first floor of a retirement building, so she would do old women's hair. Yeah, she loves to garden and knit, and she used to make me and Daisy lots of clothes when we were younger. um I think one of my favorite dresses when I was younger, she made me, and I thought it was so pretty. She
Yay.
has lots of hobbies and lots of like joys in her life, and she doesn't work anymore. She retired when I was in middle school, and she kind of just like stayed home and watched Daisy and I while my grandpa was at work. He worked in the welding industry and construction. So yeah, she just was living her life with lots of hobbies. Do you have any kind of wrapping up thoughts on mothering and motherhood?
I think my wrapping up thoughts on mothering and motherhood are that it's a hard task, and at the end of the day, our mothers and those who we see as mother figures in our lives, they also have their own past, they have their own histories, and they have their own experiences. And I think it took me a really long time, and I hate that it took me a really long time to like acknowledge that of my mom, that she is also her own person. um and again, I think that's why I keep putting in perspective that like she was only 21 when she like had me, and I go through all my shit every day. So um my mom has her own shit too. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, very grateful for the way that she was able to mother me in the way that those around me have and continue to do so. And I kind of just hope that I can continue to do that for others too.
Hey, I think my thoughts on mothering are very much ditto to everything that you just said, because I feel like my experience to mothering is really similar to yours, and I too feel astonished at all that my mom was able to accomplish while also being a mother, and I'm astonished at everything my grandma was able to accomplish while being a mother, and still baffles me how people can mother and still be holy themselves when sometimes it feels like mothering can be all consuming. So I'm nervous and hesitant to continue to mother in the future, but I look forward to it, I suppose. And I admire those who are doing it now. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in for the fifth week. I think this is the fifth
Yes,
week.
50. Yes.
We truly appreciate it, and we'll see y'all next week.
Bye.
Bye.